Hi class, let's now move on to the discussion about interviews. Interviews can be face-to-face or by phone. In a face-to-face interview, there is an interviewer who asks questions and records oral responses. Even though visual presentation of questions and responses may be used when the complexity might cause confusion to the respondents. The interviewer records the answers either on a computer or some other type of device. With the permission of the respondent, an interview can be audio taped or videotaped. The amount of preparation for interviews is demanding. First, in order to set up an interview, individuals in the selected sample need to be contacted via email, mail, or by phone. They should be informed about the purpose of the study and a future visit by an interviewer. Make it clear whether there is any type of compensation for their time and explain that their responses will be kept confidential. The interviewer and the respondent need to agree on the time and the place for the interview to take place so that interruption to the respondent's daily life can be minimized. Second, interviewers need to be hired and trained. Given the budget, the researchers need to have a plan about the number of interviewers to be hired, the number of interviews to be conducted by each interviewer, and the payment details for conducting interviews. The training of interviewers is important. The interviewers need to have good communication styles. Communication is the key to a successful interview because it not only helps increase the chances of getting respondents to agree to participate in the study, but also makes it easier to gain the trust of the respondents and set them at ease to talk freely and talk as much as they want. The training also need to first familiarize the interviewers with the questionnaire being used in the study. Second, have them conduct practice interviews. Third, regulate all interviewers to ensure that they administer the questionnaire in an identical manner, which is critical for reliability when there is more than one interviewer and each interviewer may interview multiple respondents. Fourth, make sure that interviewers simply ask the questions, not express their own opinions. And finally, record respondents' answers to all questions verbatim. It's great if the respondent allows the interviewer to audio tape the interview. If not, it's very important for the interviewer to record the respondents' answers faithfully. At the beginning of the interview, the interviewer needs to briefly mention the voluntary nature of participation to secure the cooperation of the respondent. Build rapport with the respondent and assure the respondent that there are no right or wrong answers. During the interview, the interviewer should only ask questions without expressing their own opinions. The interviewer may use follow-up questions to get more information about certain issues or to ask for further clarification if the initial answer from the respondent to an open-ended question is unclear, off track, or inconsistent. But the probing should not be overly demanding. It's important that no one else is present during the interview process. After the interview, make sure the respondent's identity is kept confidential. The questionnaire can only be identified with a unique number. In addition, interviews need to be validated by calling the respondents to verify that the interviews took place because fake interviews tend to be common. Interviews conducted over the phone have many similarities with in-person interviews. including the recruitment and training of interviewers, the recruitment of respondents, the oral presentation of questions and responses, and the collection of data by interviewers using electronic devices. Nonetheless, there are key differences. Phone interviews make observation of nonverbal gestures impossible. Also, it's important to make sure the person who answers the phone is the proper respondent. Phone interviews usually take place in the evening of weekdays or in the afternoon of weekends in order to reach respondents when they are most likely free. There are some advantages too. Phone interviews cost less than face-to-face interviews because the interviewers reside at a single site. Quality control is easier because conversations can be easily monitored. With the advancement of technology, computer-assisted telephone interviews greatly reduce the room for human errors. The adoption of computers eliminates the process of transferring written responses to a computer, alerts interviewers of invalid responses, and helps automatically route the questions. In comparison to self-administered surveys, both face-to-face and phone interviews share a common problem called the interviewer effect. The interviewer effect can be a result of some unwanted interviewer behaviors. For example, the interviewer did not ask the questions exactly as written, or they expressed some personal opinions on the issue being asked about. Such departures from interview rules can influence the survey results. In addition, the presence of an interviewer increases respondents' tendency to provide answers with the intention to please the interviewer or to meet social expectations. Now we know that neither self-administered surveys nor interviews are perfect. Every data collection mode has advantages and disadvantages. You as a researcher need to make a comprehensive evaluation of the different options when it's time to make a decision about your data collection mode. First of all, look at your budget and compare it with the estimated costs. Online surveys are the cheapest way to go. Second is the response rate. The response rate is the worst for self-administered surveys, but it's the best for face-to-face interviews. Low response rate usually means greater biases in the sample data, which would lead to more biases in the results. Third, the amount of time needed for data collection is the least with online surveys. Another thing to consider is the length of a survey. In all data collection modes, it's recommended to limit the whole process to about 20 minutes or less. Nonetheless, respondents have more flexibility in terms of time if they work with self-administered surveys. In terms of data quality, privacy is better protected in self-administered surveys, and the absence of interviewers reduces the respondent's tendency to offer more socially desirable answers, especially when the survey questions are about sensitive topics. Oftentimes, people tend to provide more information in face-to-face interviews. In comparison, when you do self-administered surveys, using follow-up questions to probe for further information is unlikely, even when the questions are not completely answered. A final consideration is about tracking. When the same group of respondents need to be tracked for investigating changes over time, telephone interviews are a better option because people tend to keep the same phone numbers. Communication is not limited by physical locations, and the results, including response rates, are comparable to face-to-face interviews. After this discussion, let's assume you have decided on the data collection mode. Now it's time to pay another visit to your survey questions. For self-administered surveys, see if it is possible or necessary to convert requests and imperatives into assertions, and limit open-ended questions at the end of the instrument. For interviews, on the other hand, it's better to use open-ended questions and prepare possible follow-up questions. In other words, use more inquiries and imperatives and limit assertions to a minimum. With advancement in technology, there are new developments in survey design and administration. For example, voice recognition entry and touch tone data entry are possible in large-scale phone interviews. Computer-assisted self-interviewing is now an option, especially when it's important to protect the privacy of respondents and to reduce the overall costs. Audio self-administered questionnaires are also available that allow visually impaired and illiterate people to participate in survey studies. In case that you ever need them in the future, there are survey organizations out there, and their business is to help clients conduct survey research. It will be an option to consider for large-scale survey research. All right, this is the end of our discussion this week. Thank you, and let me know if you have any questions.